All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Material Status webinar. If you can hear me, please raise your hand on that little GoToMeeting panel so I can make sure everybody's hearing me here. All right. Excellent. I see some hands going up. All right. My name is Lori McNeely. I've been supporting Ultriva for more than 5 years now. And joining me is Butch Doherty, and he has been with Ultriva for more than 7 years. A couple of FAQs here. If you have a question, please use the question box here. You can type your question here. In case you missed it, the little raise your hand icon is pointed out right here. And we will be recording the webinars. We are recording this right now, and we will have it available on our help site for viewing in the future. Our next webinar is going to be Thursday, April 17th at noon Central Time. And we are doing these demos in Ultriva version 7.5 and higher. Our agenda for today, we will be going over the features of the material status and how you can interpret that information. And we're going to have a couple of surveys throughout this. We will give you the results of those surveys. And actually with that, we are ready to jump into the demo. So I am going to pass this over to Butch. All right, I think you've got it.
I believe I do. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm glad you're able to take a little time out and spend a little time with us. What I'm going to go over today is basically the functions and features of our material status screen. Some of you may already be familiar with it. You may learn something new today, or you may not have used it at all and come out the other end with some useful information. So what I'm going to do is start here on the home page. Everyone should be familiar with this, and let you know that really there are two ways to navigate to our material status screen. The most obvious being the material status menu item up here. If we click on that, what we're going to get is a full screen of all items with all suppliers in every state that they're in. Whereas if we, again, from the home screen, navigate by way of the inventory health panel, when we drill down on any of the RYG statuses, what we'll see is a filtered version of only those items in that status. So for instance, if I were to drill down into the yellow items here, we're going to see only those two. It's a quick way to really take a look at those parts that are in an RYG status that are more likely to require attention. You may have already been trained on the fact that, when you come in the morning as a user of Ultriva, the items which are in red and maybe some items which are in yellow are going to be the ones that require attention more, excuse me, more immediately than items that are in green, which are, less likely or not at all likely of stocking out, and may even be opportunities to explore later on for obtaining some inventory savings. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just navigate into the entire material status screen. And like I said, what you see here is all parts in all states for all suppliers. Much like many of the screens throughout Ultriva, we have our filter at the top. So we see that we're starting at our buyer material status, and we can filter this by particular issues. Again, right now we're looking at all items. I can filter it by only those items that have late shipments, only those items that have late receipts, so they may have been shipped or may not have been shipped, but they're past their due date. And I can look at anything that has late acknowledgments. In other words, it's been released, but the supplier has not acknowledged the order or accepted the order within 24 hours. I happen to know that there are none of those right now, so I'm not going to filter by that. We can just take a look, let's say, at late shipments. And like the top of the page filter on all pages, anytime you make a change, you're going to have to hit the go button in order to apply that filter change. We actually don't have any late shipments right now on this screen. So I'm going to go back to all items, click the go button, and we can, like on many screens, look at all the items, or if you're the item coordinator for a particular set of items, you can actually look at My Items. This is one of those selection boxes where if you start typing in a name or a value, you'll get a drop-down list. If you simply put in a space bar, or hit the space bar rather, you'll get a list of every available choice here on the show. So I can show all items, I can show only my items, those items that I manage. I can show all items managed by other users if I want to. All right, so again, for demo purposes, we're going to stick with all items. We can here filter by red, yellow, or green, just like we can drill in from the home page to red only, yellow only, or green only. The difference being I can choose more than one. So I could look at all of my red and my yellow items at the same time. All right, here again, I'm going to take the default and have it just be everything. I can also filter by product line if that's one of the values that you load into Ultriva and separate out your parts by. I can filter by commodity codes, again, if that's one of the values that you load into Ultriva and use. Some of you may have a different title for these lines because we do offer configuration of those two types. So it may be product line, it may be item code. I know for one of our customers it's actually buyer code. So it could be anything, but whatever's there you'll be able to filter by it. You can also filter by the category, so I can look at just my forecast items, just my Kanban items, or virtual Kanban items. I can pick one or more, or I can just leave all. For the purposes of today's demo, I'm going to pick Kanban. Oops, sorry, not right click, left click. I'm going to pick my Kanban items. I can also filter by a particular item number or group of item numbers that happen to start with the same prefix or something like that. This is a free-form text field, so whatever I type in here is going to be just what I type. And finally, I can filter by supplier. This is another one of the text fields where if I hit the space bar, I'm going to get a list of all of my suppliers, or if I start typing, it's going to filter it down to only those that begin with the characters that I've typed. And again, here today, we're just going to leave it as all suppliers. And so now we know we're looking at all items here, all red, yellow, and green, all product lines, commodity codes, and item numbers and suppliers, but only the type Kanban. So I'll go ahead and click the Go button. And it has filtered by more than I wanted, but I'm going to carry on nonetheless. So what we've got on the screen here are 3 items, 2 that are in yellow and 1 that are in red. Okay, we see by the RYG status. Just to kind of go over the layout of the screen and what information you have here, obviously the item number itself. We're going to tell you how many units you have on hand. That number is derived based on the quantity on all of the cards that are currently in an on-hand status or ready to release status. All right, we're going to tell you based on history what has been your last 15 days daily usage. So your average usage per day over the last 15 days and your average usage per day over the last 90 days. And again, those figures are based on the cards that have actually been released during that time multiplied by the quantity on those cards. You'll see that they can vary. You may have a, you may see an upward trend or a downward trend in your usage. I do want to point out that these small arrows that you see to the right of the numbers do not actually indicate an upward or downward trend in your usage, but rather they indicate whether your actual daily usage, that being the last 15 days and 90 days, is greater than or less than the standard daily usage which is loaded in to your item master. And if you hover over those, what you'll see is a percentage indicator of how much more or less you are using than the standard daily usage. And if you want to see the standard daily usage, all you have to do is highlight the part in question, go to the View Details button, give that a click, and that's going to show you your Kanban board as your first view. We'll come back to that. But if I go over here and click on the Item Details tab, right down here in the bottom left-hand side, you see usage per day. So for this particular item, we have a usage per day of 250.0551. Now, where does that number come from? It really varies depending on how the system is configured in your particular installation. Some of the ways that that number gets populated are it could be manually by a user if you're not using an item sync or not passing the value in item sync. So obviously the second way could be using an item sync. So if on some regular basis, either automatically in the background or by someone actually uploading a file, you're taking the item master from your ERP or MRP system and downloading that into Ultriva, one of the values that can come over with that item sync is your standard or average daily usage. It may be a number that gets entered into ERP manually by a user, or in some cases, I know a lot of my customers actually derive that number based on the ERP historical usage and or the MRP forecast usage. So it can be, some calculation that the IT department has come up with to say, we're going to pass this value as a average daily usage to Ultriva. Okay, and then the third method you could use to update that is by doing a manual item data load. So I know some customers will, rather than using an IT dependent item sync, will create an item master file per the requirements in Ultriva, and then go via the admin function, go in and do a data load. All right, so those are the three methods by which this particular value is populated. And I think actually Lori might have a question to post there for you based on this.
All right, so thank you. I'll go ahead and I'll launch this poll. So on that usage per day here in Ultriva, how do you yourselves update that? Through the item sync, data load, manually do it in Ultriva. Maybe you've never adjusted it. So go ahead and vote there, or press the submit button, and we'll see how everybody's doing their updating. I see several votes coming in. Looks like we'll give it about 3 more seconds here. All right, we will go ahead and close the poll, and now everybody should be able to see the results of that. Looks like most people are doing that manually in Ultriva, but quite a few are doing it through an item sync. All right, I will go ahead and hide that and turn this back over to Butch.
Great, thanks, Lori. Okay, so as far as the view we're getting here when we click the view details, there are a few tabs. I'm not going to go deeper into the item details because that was actually covered as part of another webinar that Lori did earlier and can be viewed from our help site. Okay, so we won't bother with that. The first thing you saw when we navigated in was the Condom Lord. This should look very familiar to you if you're a regular user of Ultriva, as it's the same or a similar view that you get when you go to the buyer status report. So what we're showing you on the Kanban board is basically in your Kanban loop, where are all of your Kanban cards at this given time. We can see here we have 2 on hand and actually 5 that are in transit, so they've already been shipped by the supplier, but we can see by the icon there that they are in fact not yet received and are late. Okay, and again, just like on the buyer status report, if you hover over the card, you're going to see some details about that card. On hand has the least amount of details, and your in transit is going to have your largest amount of details, including when it was actually shipped, when the expected receive date is, so on and so forth. All right, moving over to the card details. This is another view that's available when you're going into the admin items or item master. What we see here is just a listing of all of the Kanban cards that are in the loop and what their current status is. So just like on the Kanban board, we can see we have 2 cards that are on hand, the rest are in transit, and then we can see a variety of other pieces of information about each card. And then the final tab that's available from this view is your Kanban inventory. So we're looking back over a historic period and showing you basically, you can see here by the legend, the green is what is your current loop size, or what has been your loop size throughout this particular period of time. What is your average daily on-hand inventory? You can see here, and how does that compare to your loop size? Then what has been your average daily demand, in other words, your average daily usage, and that's the average daily usage per Ultriva's historic data. In other words, all of the cards that have been released during that period of time. And then finally, we see the standard daily demand. Again, the standard daily demand is what we keep in the item master that I showed you under item details for your average daily usage. So we can see in this, for instance, the average daily usage, or the standard daily usage rather, has remained flat. In this instance, it hasn't been changed. The loop has not been adjusted, but we see some variation in the actual daily usage. So that might be an indicator. We see quite a gap here between safety stock and daily usage. Maybe an indicator that this loop could use adjusting. All right. Coming ahead. Oh, one last thing on this page, actually, and again, you see this in the item master itself, but you can see what your current loop size is, how many replenishment cards or permanent cards are in that Kanban loop, how many cards are set to be destroyed after the next consumption. So that may be based on a loop adjustment, and then how many non-replenishment cards there are. So those could be spike cards, they could be temporary cards or finite cycle cards, or they could be seasonal cards. All right, and then a total of your cards. And you are able to print this page or actually export the raw data to Excel. All right, I'm going to go back to my my report. And moving on, the next value is the days of material on hand. So what we're doing there is applying a quite simple calculation of your current units on hand divided by the last 15 days average daily usage, and telling you, if you continue in that pattern, then the days of material that you currently have on hand for this part should last you about a day and a half, a little bit more than a day and a half. So what you've got to deal with there, and then the next most important piece of information: when are you going to get some parts in? So I know I only have a day and a half here, but I also know that I'm expecting a delivery actually today on the 20th. And I know that my expected units are 1,050. So let's talk about this a little bit. When we show your next delivery due, what we're doing there is first looking for any cards which have been released and also accepted by the supplier. We don't post a next delivery due if the order has not been accepted by the supplier yet. So once it's been accepted and it has a PO assigned to it, then we'll say, okay, based on the required receive date, you can expect to receive goods on the 20th, and you can expect to receive 1,050 of them. And we come up with that number. I'm going to go back to the view details here, simply by providing the sum of all cards that are due. So these are the 5 cards that are due, and the sum of the quantity on all 5 cards is 1,050 units. So therefore, we can tell you that on the 20th, you should receive 1,050 units. Oop, I lost my filter there. All right, I suppose it's applied the filter that I wanted originally. All right, so we've seen the next delivery due and the units expected. The next thing we're going to show you is whether there is a projected stock out and whether you have any past due orders. Now, one thing that's interesting here is I have seen there are instances where we may show that you have a projected stock out, and this projected stock out is based on the fact that your current on-hand quantity will cover you for about a little less than 2 days, but you don't have a delivery due until the 24th. Now that's 3,150 pieces, but if you continue your usage pattern as you have over the past 15 days, you are likely going to stock out of this part. So in the event that there are cards that are currently in process with the supplier, then it may be an opportunity to communicate with the supplier and request an expedited shipment to make sure that you don't have a stock out and don't stop any of your lines. So the thing that I was about to mention is that there are times when you may see that you have a projected stock out. This is a perfect, for instance, but the RYG on the part is green. And that kind of doesn't make any sense, but I'll explain it. What it means is that the RYG rule that has been set for this part, and it's likely a blanket RYG rule at the plant level, has been set in such a way that the factor that will turn the part from green to yellow and yellow to red is a value which is actually less than the quantity of one full card. So in other words, chances are there's one card on hand for this part that has more on it than is represented by the percentage that would turn it yellow or red. And this is a little bit of a dangerous thing because it means that you won't be alerted to the fact that this part is in red until you've actually stocked out. It will take releasing that last card to turn it red. And my personal recommendation to all of my customers in a situation like this is you are able to set up RYG rules, not only at the plant level, but at the product line level and also at the part level. And I believe there's been another webinar on RYG rules, if there has, if I'm correct. That would be available at the help site. And if I'm incorrect, it may be a topic we want to cover soon. So what we see here is a part that is likely going to stock out, yet it is in green. And I would say this part should be managed a little bit more granularly and have an RYG rule set up for it specifically so that we can see well ahead of the time that we're having an imminent stock out that we're turning yellow and we're turning red. Okay, and then the last sort of piece of actionable information here is what are your past due orders? Of all of the orders that you are expecting or all of the parts that you're looking at, how many have past due orders? And again, this is a situation that can indicate to you that you need to contact your supplier and find out what's going on. If the goods haven't been shipped, why not? Is the supplier willing to ship it in an expedited fashion and cover the cost of that freight? Or has it been shipped and it just hasn't been received yet? Maybe it's sitting on the dock and it hasn't been scanned. It's an indicator that some action needs to be taken. All right, and we see that we have very few past due orders. We have very few potential stockouts. We have a fair number of deliveries due. So the vast majority of the parts that we're looking at here are in good shape and need no action taken on them. All right. Then the final thing we have over here on the right is just a handy little Sparkline chart for our on-hand trend. And what this is going to do is basically looking back over a period of time. This particular one is looking back a full 6 months on this installation. What we see is the on-hand trend for this given part, and also what the actual safety stock units have been over that period of time. All right. So again, it's a handy little tool. Nothing you can really do with it other than look at it, analyze it, and have a bit of information over, do I have stable usage, or is the velocity of this part erratic? Is there anything I need to do to move this from, maybe it's a Kanban part and the on-hand trend is quite volatile, and I've had some stockouts, and I really should move this part from a Kanban replenishment to a forecast replenishment. All right, so that covers basically the information that you have here, and also getting into the details. A couple of other things I want to mention very briefly is you see here that I'm actually able to edit or even disable parts from this screen. That's because I'm currently logged in as a plant administrator, and it's based on that role. So all of you have your user IDs, have a particular account type or a role, and your system is set up such that you have whatever permissions are appropriate for that role. So it's possible that you might come to this page, and if you don't have the administrator role with the permissions to do the disabling and the editing, you would only see the View Details button, and that's perfectly fine. So if you log in and you go to this page and you notice you don't have Edit and Disable, doesn't mean there's anything wrong, just that that's the permissions that are set up for your user role. And then finally, the last thing on this page is up here in the right-hand corner. As with many of our pages, you have the ability to print the page out, to export the data, and to add it to your favorites. So if you wanted to print or export, when you click on that, it's going to ask you how many pages do you want to print or export. This happens to be only a single page, so I would say just one page. If there were 5 pages of data, then I would say I want all 5, or I just want the first one. it's your choice. And then the same is true on the export. So when you print it out, what you're going to get is, you know, a new tab, a printer representation in a new tab that you can just send to your printer. When you export it, you're exporting to Excel, and again, you would pick the number of pages you want to export. I'm going to say 1 page, and if I go ahead and export that, then you may be familiar with this routine, and it may look different depending on the version of Windows and Excel that you use. But if I open up that report, and this is just telling me that the data in the report is different than the extension indicates, and you always just say, yes, that's fine. And what we see here is basically a data representation of pretty much exactly what is on the page that we were just looking at. The only thing that you don't get in the export is are the Sparkline charts. Okay, and you can save that and use it, or not, as the case may be. And then finally, favorites. On a lot of our pages now, you're able to add a page to your favorites. So if I just click on favorites, I happen to already have material status there, but if I didn't, I would simply add to favorites, would add material status to my list. Then the next time I log in, wherever I am in the Ultriva application, I can always go to my favorites, click on favorites, click on material status, and it's going to bring me back to this page. Okay? It's always going to bring you to an unfiltered view. When you come to the material status, unless you come in through the RYG statuses, you will always start with what I call an unfiltered view, or basically a view that includes all parts for all statuses for all suppliers and everything else. And it is from this point that you can then begin to filter down the data and look only at that is you know, relevant to you and the role that you fulfill.
All right. We did have one question. Sorry to interrupt. We did have one question
okay.
that came in that was kind of talking about, you know, some of these items are in the green state. And I know you went over it, but I thought maybe we could go through it one more time. The item's in the green state, but it's still at a risk for stock out.
Right. Okay. Sorry. I'm happy to explain it again.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, one more time,
Sure.
please.
Sure. No problem. So, and understanding it does require an understanding of how the red, yellow, green rules work. In this, I would have to log out and log back in as a, you know, as an application administrator and go to a bunch of screens to show it to you. But I happen to know that the red, yellow, green rule, or RYG rule, for this particular plant is set such that a part will turn from green to yellow when it reaches 125% of safety stock. Okay, with stock on hand. So what that means is if my safety stock is 100 pieces, if the number of days of safety days calculate to 100 pieces, then my part will not turn yellow until I get to one less than 125. Okay, so at 124 pieces, I will go to a yellow status. And then I know also that on this particular site, it goes from yellow to red when it reaches 75% of stock on hand. So again, that means that if that value is still greater than, or sorry, beg your pardon, is still less than the total of one card, then it cannot change from green to any other color. So using the example of I have a you know, an RYG rule that says when I get to 125 pieces, then turn it yellow. When I get to 75 pieces, turn it red. Well, that's great unless I happen to have a card that has more than 125 pieces on it. If my card quantity is 200, 250, 500, 1,000, whatever it is, then, and my safety stock is greater than the, is less than that number, then it won't turn red or yellow.
Yep. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Hopefully that answers that. Any other questions there, Lori?
So far that's about it.
Okay, well, I know we have an hour scheduled, but we really have covered just about everything on the material status screen.
Okay, all right, sounds good. We have another poll question and a couple more things to go through then. So I will go ahead and launch the next poll question, please. So do you now feel more comfortable with analyzing this material status? So yeah, yes, somewhat. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you still have a few unanswered questions. So go ahead and please answer and submit that. I see a few votes coming in. All right, we'll give it another 5 seconds here. I see the voting's kind of leveling off. All right, very good. I will go ahead and we'll close this, and we will share that with you. All right, looks like a lot of people have some good takeaways here, and a few people still aren't sure. Maybe also another couple people that maybe still would like a little bit more instruction. All right, so I will go ahead and share my desktop again. Make presenter here. Show my screen. All right, so we do have some upcoming events here. So our next event is going to be the next webinar on April 17th, and we're going to go over the Kanban resizing tool. And this is a little bit of a good lead into that, because if you see, you're increasing, you got some increases or decreases based on your consumption pattern. Next thing you might want to think about is the resizing. So that's going to be coming up next. And I do have my contact information here on the screen. And so if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. And other than that, I think that's about all we have for today. So I want to thank everybody for your time, and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you all very much.